I'm going to talk about women's suffrage and the 19th Amendment. The women's suffrage movement was the struggle for the right of women to vote and run for office and is part of the overall women's rights movement. The beginning of the fight for women's suffrage is usually traced to the Declaration of Sentiments, which was produced at the first Women's Rights Convention in 1848. 4 years later, in 1852, Susan B. Anthony joined the fight, arguing that the right women needed above every other was the right for suffrage. Susan B. Anthony was a huge influence in women's suffrage, and she gave everything she had for women's suffrage. She spent the next 50 years of her life fighting for the right to vote. She would work tirelessly, giving speeches, petitioning Congress, state legislators, publishing a feminist newspaper, all for the cause that would not succeed until the ratification of the 19th Amendment 14 years after her death. Elizabeth Stanton was another huge influence in the women's suffrage movement. A group of delegates led by Stanton produced a Declaration of Sentiments document modeled after the Declaration of Independence, which stated, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men and women are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness." In 1869, two distinct factions of the suffrage movement emerged. Stanton and Anthony created the National Woman Suffrage Association, which directed its effort towards changing federal law and opposed the 15th Amendment because it excluded women. Lucy Stone, a one-time Massachusetts anti-slavery advocate and a prominent lobbyist for women's rights, formed the American Woman Suffrage Association. These two were different associations due to the fact that NWSA was just focused on women's rights and AWSA was racially diverse for all genders. The NWSA eventually decided to try their efforts statewide, hoping that this would cause a ripple effect and take their message nationwide. These two groups needed to work together for the right to vote, not separately. There was a turning point in the late 1880s when the nation experienced an explosion of women who wanted to volunteer in whatever they were able to do. These women were very determined to expand, and this provided new momentum for the NWSA and the AWSA. In the 1890s, the NWSA and the AWSA merged to form the National American Woman Suffrage Association. The new organization's strategy was to lobby for women's voting rights on a state-by-state basis. The National American Woman Suffrage Association represented millions of women and was the parent organization of hundreds of smaller local and state groups. The NAWSA hosted and participated in a large and theatrical suffrage parades and held major annual conventions that helped to keep its members organized. This was the turning point because women were working together to achieve something great. Getting the right to vote. Getting women the right to vote has been a very long and hard process. There have been many attempts, but they've always seemed to fail. The first suffrage amendment had been introduced in Congress in 1848. The Senate had posed the greatest obstacle to its passage. In ensuring 71 years of House Representatives had passed the constitutional amendment a number of times, but it had always failed to gain Senate approval. In the years leading up to the Senate passing the 19th Amendment, many states gave women the right to vote. It took years and many activists to get this amendment even considered. These were the first states to allow women to vote and set the stage to get this amendment passed at federal law. On May 21, 1919, U.S. Representative James Mann, a Republican from Illinois and a chairman of the Suffrage Committee, proposed the House resolution to approve the Susan Anthony Amendment, granting women the right to vote. The measure passed the House 304 to 89, a full 42 votes above the required two-thirds majority. The amendment was then sent to the states for ratification. Within 6 days of the ratification cycle, Illinois, Michigan, and Wisconsin each ratified the amendment. Kansas, New York, and Ohio followed on June 16, 1919. By March of the following year, a total of 35 states had approved the amendment, one state shy of the two-thirds required for ratification. This was such a long process, and being so close to having this ratified made it easier for more women to come together for women's suffrage. It was all down to the Tennessee vote to see if the amendment would be ratified or not, and on August 18, 1920, the 19th Amendment was ratified. On November 2nd of that same year, more than 8 million women across the United States voted in elections for the first time. It took over 60 years for the remaining 12 states to ratify the 19th Amendment. The impact. The activism of women during the Progressive era, along with their opportunity for advancement in the political world after obtaining the right to vote, motivated women to change their influence on their country. Having secured the right to vote, women's effort to expand their political influence once enfranchised increased dramatically, transforming America into an entirely new world of politics by running for political office, forming more powerful organizations, and promoting bolder, progressive causes. Women left their mark on modern. Women began taking on more political positions, such as office holders in the House of Representatives, legislators, executive positions, Secretary of Education, Secretary of State, and local government positions. As stated by the New York Times Magazine, men proved willing to admit women to an equal share in the spoils of office, and that's what exactly happened. The 19th Amendment played a pivotal role in promoting reproductive rights for women, ushering in a new voting population with a political agenda that would ultimately legalize contraception and abortion. Women also experienced economic progress as a result, with the increased availability of family planning services and supplies allowing more women to enroll in higher education and enter professional occupations. This was the starting point for all women's rights. Women now had the opportunity to make things happen on a political level, which would change the way society works for good. Women in today's society now are treated with much more respect than in the past. Women are now leaders, and they are proving to the world what they can do. Women still struggle to be treated as equal to men in some aspects, like how much women get paid. There is still a wage gap, but it is getting better, and things are progressing for the better.